Hi everyone, welcome to part 2 of my bookshelf tour. I kind of decided to do a couple of extra ones this week just because I had the time to do them. So hopefully you enjoy seeing the next 2 shelves on my bookshelf. We're going to start with bookshelf 2. Last school holidays, I rearranged my bookshelves so that now they went alphabetically down a shelf. They used to go across. I don't know, I change my bookshelves, at least twice a year. So this was just something different to try. Technically, the shelf that we are talking about today is all of my authors' surnames that begin with C, because apparently I have a lot of them. I'm going to cut to a quick overview of my shelf, and then I will talk about the books. Alright guys, so last week we started with bookshelf number 1. Today we're going to be talking about bookshelf number 2. So this is what it looks like close up. It is pretty much my C shelf, I think. I've got a lot of books by people with surnames that begin with C. And I have a cup full of pens and just some odds and ends, some little glass test tubes, and then another little beaker full of little crafting tools that I just keep here so that they're out of the way. So let's talk now about the books that are on the shelf. There are 24 of them. I'm going to try and be a little bit quicker than I was last week. First up, we have The Surprising Power of a Good Dumpling by Wai Chim. This is a Love Oz YA contemporary story. We follow Anna, who is helping to keep her family afloat. Her mother is suffering from some kind of mental health issues and is abed a lot of the time, so she's helping to look after her siblings and she's helping out her dad at his restaurant. And they think that everything will get better when mum gets out of bed, and in fact things actually get worse. This really does look at culture, it does look at family, and it was just one of those stories that gripped me from start to finish, and I highly recommend it. We have Emergency Contact by Mary H.K. Choi, and to be honest I kept this one mostly because of the cover, because it is aesthetically pleasing to me, and it is about Sam and Penny who cross paths completely unintentionally and then end up striking up a relationship, even via text message, as they share each other's secrets. Then there's The Ghost Bride by Yangsze Choo. I haven't reread this one in a while, but I really should, because it was set in the 1890s in Malaya, and a 17-year-old girl is presented with the opportunity to be a ghost bride, and as a result, on a nightly basis, she finds herself being drawn into this different world. And it's sort of the world that sits on the boundary of reality and dreams, and it was just beautifully written. The first time I read it, I remember I just was amazed at how this world had been built up and how beautiful it was. I have Beautiful Mess by Crichton. Again, another book I've kept because of the beautiful cover. It is a Love Oz YA contemporary book, and to be honest, I'm a little bit sketchy on the details. It's been a while since I read it, but it is about Ava, who is sort of on a downward spiral. Things in her life aren't going particularly well, and it's how she copes with that. Then we come to one of my favorite fantasy-ish series, the Invisible Library series by Genevieve Cogman. You have The Invisible Library, The Burning Page, The Masked City, The Lost Plot, and The Mortal Word. And I do have the next book in the series that I haven't read yet. I'm hoping to read it in October because it'll be great. This is a series about a librarian spy called Irene, and her job is to travel between different versions of Earth to reclaim copies of rare books to store in the library, which is sort of this in-between space. So it sits in between all of these worlds. And once books are stored there, it helps to establish some stability for the different worlds that it's come from. You have fae, you have dragons, you have librarian spies, a love of books. It is an absolutely fantastic series, and I just love going back to it time and time again. So I can't wait to read the next book because it's been a while since I've dived into this world. I have 2 books by G Coleman. I have Terra Nullius, which was her first release, and this one is a look at the colonisation of Australia, and it is a sci-fi speculative fiction. It is very, very good, but very confronting, as is The Old Lie, which is her second release that really looks at Australia's treatment of black diggers after World War II. It looks at the native rights, the stolen generation. There's a lot that happens in this book, and neither of them are easy reads, but they are definitely worth it. I don't know if I can hold this up without it falling somewhere, so we'll just give it a shot. It is the Expanse series by James S.A. Corey, which is a combination of 2 authors. And this is the space opera series that I am loving. It's probably my favourite space opera series. So you have book 1, which is Leviathan Wakes, Caliban's War, Abaddon's Gate, Cibola Burn, Nemesis Games, Babylon's Ashes, and Persepolis Rising. If you're unfamiliar with the series, it is basically a giant space opera / political thing that takes place the majority of the time actually in space, but we do have trips to Earth, to Luna, which is the moon colony, and the colonization of the belt, or the asteroid belt. Mars is also another huge factor, and generally speaking, the lunar colony is very closely aligned with Earth, and Earth and Luna have a very tumultuous relationship with the people who colonized Mars. Mars is a very military planet, whereas Earth is still playing a lot of the political side of things. And then sort of caught in the middle, you have the Belters, the people who colonized the belt, who are seen as really the second-class citizens of the universe. At the very start of the series, we meet the core group of people who become the characters of the series, James Holden and his shipmates, and they find themselves caught up in something that is bigger than they are, and yet they end up being framed for something and then hunted across the solar system. And then we discovered that actually things are not quite what they seem. There is some kind of alien entity that is causing massive problems, and the whole thing is just enormous in scope and just fabulous. I have a couple of Michael Crichton books. I have Jurassic Park and Congo. I don't actually think I've ever read Congo, but I have read Jurassic Park. It was one of the books that got me back into reading in high school. And The Lost World, which is still one of my favourite science fiction books. Then there is the most intimidating book series on my bookshelf, which thankfully I have read, and that is the Passage trilogy by Justin Cronin. Now, I don't know if there's another book to this. I actually haven't looked because, to be honest, if there is, I may not go back to it. But I did love this series. It is kind of like a cross between literary fiction and horror, which is probably the only reason that I did get through it, because we know this week I've talked about how literary fiction and I don't get along. But book 1 is The Passage, book 2 is The 12, and book 3 is The City of Mirrors. 1, I love all of these covers. 2, I love that I got through something that is so ginormous. I mean, book 1 is nearly 1,000 pages long. I really adored this series. It's sort of a take on vampires / zombies / end of the world apocalypse, survival, chosen one. Yeah. It's great. I enjoyed it. And then the last book that is on my C shelf is Words in Deep Blue by Cath Crowley, which is a Love Oz Way contemporary story that I reread this year, and I absolutely loved rereading it. It's about Rachel Sweetie, who returns to the place where she grew up after the death of her brother, and there she begins to reconnect with the people that she knew growing up after cutting them off completely from her life. She finds herself working in a secondhand bookstore that she spent a lot of time in growing up because her best friend was the son of the owner of it. And one of the most beautiful things about this is the letter library, which is a section of the bookstore that is full of books that people cannot buy, but they can sit there, read, and write notes and messages in the margins, and it's just gorgeous. So those are all the books on my second shelf. Let me know in the comments if you have read any of them, or if you have any questions about any more of them. I'm hoping to have part 3 up this week as well, so fingers crossed, stay tuned for that. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you are staying safe and healthy and sane, and I will catch you guys in my next video. Thanks for watching. Bye guys.